Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 23rd of July. Looking at euro dollar first then, and well, it put a bit of a swing in on Friday, closed above the trend line once again, and I say once again, the trend line's been moved, so it's closed above it once again. In that respect, should I be adjusting it some more? Eventually it will become horizontal at this rate. Where to now? Well, it's the Trump effect obviously kicked it into play last week, coming in on Thursday and running into Friday with him reiterating his comments. Now, is that going to push on through? Well, we'll see how the sentiment's changing, but for now, if it does continue to push on the upside with this bullish pivot swing that's sort of sitting there, where the prior highs there at 1789, maybe even the monthly pivot may be coming into the R1 coming to shot at some point. In the short term though, looking at this, and it's you come down to this 4-hourly picture, there's a bit of divergence here on the RSI. Let's just see if that's running through. Not really, it's only sitting on the short term RSI, so we'll see, but it has got some divergence. It's got the weekly pivot sitting below, the daily pivot sitting below on this, moved up to the hourly picture here. Now the divergence was washed out of this. It had a divergence earlier on, well, late Friday, and then through this session here, RSI actually pushed on higher. Where to? Well, obviously there's the daily pivot beckoning, high probability of that being hit, but we'll just see how this moves post 8 o'clock. At the moment it certainly looks like it's on for those daily weekly pivot sort of situation, and the Trump effect may just wash out this week. We'll see. There's nothing significant in terms of news which should really affect the euro today. Existing home sales at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That's it then. Really just watching this morning. There's the potential for it to kick on up again. A break of the upper trend line here. May just see it push up towards the daily R1 and continue in what is technically, as I say, change direction from the bigger picture, and higher lows, higher highs coming through here. So we'll see how this runs. But statistically, I prefer the downside, but we'll just watch this post 8 o'clock. Watch, I mean, it pays when I'm saying watch post 8 o'clock. I mean, sometimes it does fly off pretty quickly in the mornings and doesn't give us much opportunity to do much more with it. But these markets, a lot of the time, they just hang in around there. They give the false breakouts and run a bit later. A lot of the big moves of the day are running later in the day. Okay, cable, well, seen the same effect there. It didn't have quite such a rebound on the Thursday. The Friday's seen us put a nice bullish pivot swing in, despite the fact that there seems to be little agreement or anything regarding Brexit. It is holding up well, and well, the markets are washing out the Brexit effect for now at least. It would appear. Where to? Well, the weekly pivot's just a fraction below where price is at the moment. Daily pivot's below that. So yes, there's a with a divergence sitting here on the hourly a bit clearer. Let's see if that follows through. Maybe that's a follow through into the MACD there on the bigger length of time scale. Now, I should just explain the RSI, however, is sitting on a much more aggressive time frame. It's a much shorter time frame, so sometimes it will just give me the heads up a little bit earlier. I just look at the MACD because it's more smoothed. It's a longer period. So what from here then? Well, it does look like it may roll as well. We just again watch how this, if it breaks that 200, well, it could be on for its R1, maybe more. A roll could see us coming back to this daily pivot, whether I mean along with the euro, whether that's as far, I mean, if it may be well as far as it gets. Euro, I said a long time ago, could be well into a choppy old month or two, choppy period. There's no reason why the euro, the pound may not follow suit. It has, on the daily perspective here, rolled on pretty southward facing for most of the time, but it may just get into a bit of a range where it's seen as undervalued or neutral, and we'll see the sort of status quo run through then without too much movement. For now, as I said, from an hourly perspective, it's got that divergence across there. Could roll over towards that, back towards that weekly daily pivots below at some point. a break of that 200, as I said, makes it a much more bullish scene. Dollar yen. Dollar yen has seen the Trump. I mean, as I say, Trump effect right away through this. There was some divergences on the dailies here. There's a divergence. Well, that's really gone through further than might be expected. It's broken through that weekly pivot, coming off 30 to the 34 now, daily 34. Whether that will hold, we'll see. Getting a bounce off that at the moment. So had quite a long run through over the weekend, and sitting at that 34 is the equates to that 240 4-hourly 200. It has got weekly pivots above. It will have daily pivots above. Whoops, there we go. Daily pivot above and the weekly pivot above. Whether we'll see that move, I mean, I'll be looking for a weakening across the markets against the dollar at the moment. The dollar's soft here. But there is the potential with the way this is moving, the change of direction we've seen here, maybe any move into the 60-21, maybe as far as it runs up to the 34. Of course, then it's hitting daily pivot, weekly pivot territory. This might not be all over for the dollar, but we'll see. Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar is really still in a bit of a daily chop. I mean, you can see the intraday bars or the daily bars. They're just sort of sitting there, a bit range bound, running to its 34 again, daily 34, there 200 there, 4-hourly 200. It could be pitching back south towards the weekly pivot. If anything's going to be weak, it might be the easier play with the daily and weekly pivots sitting below it, and again some hourly divergence there. So this follows much more in line with the pound in this sort of bounce recently. The weaker move into parts of last week there. Thursday didn't really pick up so much. Friday did get the gains, but so it's a more aligned to the pound, I guess, than it is the euro at the moment. So maybe it's got the better potential of rolling over there. And finally here from the Canadian dollar, let's just look at this from a daily perspective again. Thursday didn't really give it much gain. Friday it benefited largely from the retail sales figures that came out that was way exceeded expectation there. And looking at this pattern, you could easily be drawing lines across the lows here, expecting a continuation. Maybe we'll see how that rolls out. But looking down the time frames, weekly pivots above, which may be a bit more of a draw for a bit more of a bounce. I mean, it's sort of a one-trick pony with one data number that's being released there on top of Trump's numbers. But the Trump effect didn't have such a big kicker. You look through the market, it sort of went up on the Thursday somewhat, but it wasn't quite as a big a kicker. But anyway, as we sit here now on the hourlies, bit of divergence arguably across the top there. I will just, as I say, put the MACD on there, and there's a clearer bit of, is there? Not really. Maybe from this intra low here down to the low here, there may be a bit of divergence running across there fractionally. So we'll see. It does look like, as I said, looks like there was a bit of divergence, certainly from this ultra low here to this point here on the RSI. So maybe we'll get something of a bounce up there. So news today, there's very little out there really. Existing home sales 3 p.m. 6 p.m. we've got a member of the Bank of England MPC, Broadbent, speaking at 6 o'clock, due to speak about the history and future of quantitative easing. It's very easy for me to say. Lucky I put my main dentures in today. Have a great day. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye for now.